Good morning, everybody. It is April 30th, 2021. The Ashland Public Schools cultivates the academic and social emotional growth of each student through a supportive, collaborative, innovative, and challenging environment. Students will develop into self-motivated, resilient, lifelong learners who embrace their role as responsible contributors to a global community. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV. Our order of business this morning, we make a motion to go into executive session after our open session call to order, and we'll be moving to enter into executive session under section 21A3 to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, and to return to open session. This is regarding the Ashland Educators Association teachers contract. And then when we return, we will do the agenda review and adoption. We'll have time for public comment. In our administrative, this items will include COVID-19 update, pool testing for in-person student extracurricular activities, phases, models of learning, status of athletics, and then we will adjourn. So I will ask for a second on the motion to enter into executive session.
I'll second.
And then we'll do a roll call, and also we'll let everybody know who's here. So Kathy Bates.
Here.
And yes.
Yes. Sorry.
Here and yes. Yep.
Yeah, don't put words in her mouth.
It was just a suggestion. Paul, are you here? Did you say yes?
Yeah, I said here and yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you. Mark Terry.
Here and yes.
Aaron Williams.
Here and yes.
Okay, so you guys all have a separate link that Jim forwarded from Paul. We're going to go to another link to have executive session for anybody who's tuned in watching. This should not be very long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes it does go a little bit longer than we anticipate, but we will be back after the executive session to complete the meeting. Okay, we'll see you all over there. Okay, let's see, is everybody back? There's Paul, Mark.
For Aaron.
Aaron's here too.
Oh,
I see it.
Yep. Okay.
Yep, and I see Kathy. Okay, we're back in open session. I will just check again with everybody that you're okay with the order of business this morning. Kathy.
Here and yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Paul.
Yep.
Aaron.
Yep.
Okay. Next, we move into our public comment period. So if there's anybody here who would like to offer public comment, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and let me know that you're here. And you will have a few minutes to let us know whatever it is you want us to know. Anybody? Okay, I don't hear anybody or see anybody unless somebody sees something that I don't. I will move on then to the next item on our agenda, which is the COVID-19 update from you, Jim. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, actually, before we get to that, yeah, how soon we forget. I wanted to turn it over to Mark for a minute first, just to share. We did just come back from executive session where we voted the teacher's contract, and I'm going to have Mark share with you all a little bit about that.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Lori. So just for the purpose of reporting out to the community, we were in executive session just now for the purposes of ratifying really two documents that we just negotiated with the Ashland Educators Association. And these are for a change to the MOA we entered into with them last year for the period of July 1, 2020 to June 30th of this year, and then a new 3-year contract to begin on July 1, 21 and move forward from there. But those documents have been approved by the school committee and are really now a matter of public record for anybody who wants to look at them. The comment I wanted to make is really just to acknowledge that the Ashland Educators Association was really reasonable in coming to the table. This was a negotiation that I think was made easier by the ongoing positive relationship that Jim has with the association leadership, in particular Michelle Smith, that they've been working on for years. It allows for some real honest and candid conversation, and for reasonable conversation. I want to, I guess, specifically address just the amendment to the MOA for the current year that was approved. And one of the things that I think is important for folks to know is a year ago, we were in negotiations and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, people didn't necessarily know which way was up, what was going to happen economically. And we approached our teachers and said, look, we just don't know what kind of funds we're going to have, whether we're going to do massive layoffs or any of that. And of course, that didn't happen. But what we came to was sort of a moral understanding with them that they would take a 0% increase for the current year. But if things turned out better than expected, that we would revisit that. And the school committee's agreement to amend the 2020-2021 MOA was really making good on that. And I think it's worthy of note that the level of trust that's been built up between this committee, Mr. Adams, the association, really made that workable, because the association did step up a year ago and said, okay, we don't know how things are going to go. We wanted an increase, but we understand. And so I think the community should really recognize that we agree on everything with the association now. Has there been a lot of work that had to go into this year operationally? Yes. But the association really stood behind kids and stood behind this community in taking a 0% increase last year when a lot of other associations and other places were still pushing for increases, even though it felt like the sky was falling. So I just want to make that comment in the context of reporting out on the agreements. And as I said, the agreements, the MOAs, are a matter of public record at this point since they've been approved. Anybody who's interested in taking a closer look at those is welcome to do that.
Any more questions or comments about that?
Thank
And Mark, I do just want to thank you for bringing your expertise to this process, which is a huge, huge benefit to the committee and the whole community. So excellent job. We appreciate you, and Jim as well, for all the work that he does throughout the year. I'm sorry, Kathy, did I cut you off? Were you going to ask something?
No, I was just thanking Mark for summing that up for all of us and reporting that out. Appreciate it. And you too, Lori. Thank you for doing that.
Anybody else? Okay, Jim. Now we will ask you for the COVID-19 update, please.
Okay. As I start every conversation on these days, thank you, Audrey, Ed, the entire nursing staff, for the work that you do behind the scenes that no one fully understands, even the amount of time and effort you put in. So thank you, and I appreciate it. Let me share the weekly data before I get into a couple other logistics, and I'll have Ed report out on one of them. As you can see, our numbers this week show a tremendous drop in the number of positive cases within the community. It's still, over 14 days, still at 33. But you'll notice, since last week, this is this week, the 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. This was as of late yesterday afternoon where I had the data run, and the state positivity rate continuing to decline. Our 7-day rate is dropped significantly, obviously, when you only have 3 cases over that time period. There's a continual drop with the exception of one community in athletics. And Stephen, I'm not sure if these are still the teams that will be playing with the spring 2 season, or whatever we're calling this, spring season maybe. But you and I can connect on that. I know we've only been in session for 5 days now, so we'll get to that. But positive trends, more and more vaccinations are occurring across all parties, whether it's our educators, but a lot of our students as well. And we're hearing from those students and families that the 16 and up who are eligible are receiving the shots. And we'll have a little more on that in a moment. Questions with regard to just the data itself. As you can see, it's a positive trend. Quarantine student numbers are down, and there are a couple of reasons for that. But partly because we were in break, right? And anyone who was quarantined over that time period would come off as well. So.
My only question is, we didn't end up meeting last week, and I wanted to know whether the numbers in the upper left-hand corner in terms of sort of first the prior week is from last week or from the last report we had, which was 2 weeks ago.
No, this would have been as if we had had the meeting, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, I adjusted everything, even though we didn't have the meeting last week, because things were pretty status quo, if you will. But those numbers were a reflection of the changes through last Friday.
Thank you.
Yep. And as are these numbers too. So everything's up to date, including 2 weeks prior. So. The one thing I want to touch upon is actually there are a couple. The quarantining guidelines shifted at the Department of Public Health as well as Department of Education. There will be an email going out today. I had Audrey and her staff reviewed a letter that we'll be using moving forward, but I had her review an email that I'm sending to the community today with regard to quarantining. And I know there was a lot of concern, especially with pool testing, with moving back in full in person and having students be more closely in proximity to one another, 3 to 6 feet, if you will, instead of the 6 feet apart. And that a positive case could certainly impact an entire classroom or a radius of anyone in that 6 foot range. And what we've come to see within our data is anyone in that close contact range previously has have tested and all have come back negative. And as superintendents, we were advocating with the Department of Ed, but also with the Department of Public Health saying, listen, if we're wearing masks in the classrooms, we're seeing no transmission. We're seeing zero transmission, especially when wearing masks within the classroom. And we've adjusted our standards to be 3 feet in terms of the capacity to sit in a classroom. And we just think our close contact rule needs to be modified. So DPH and DESE did actually come back over vacation week and state that those students who are considered close contacts of a positive under 2 scenarios. One is if you're in a classroom, or 2 on the bus, transportation to and from school. Those students, as long as folks wear masks, do not need to quarantine. So as between 3 and 6 feet, considered the close contact, those students no longer need to quarantine. But under 3 feet, they would, even with mask on, but it's 3 feet and above. They certainly drew a line in the sand saying if you're in athletics, you're on an athletic bus, and those students are going to be treated differently. They were only focused on in-school classroom settings, lunch period. They should still be 6 feet apart because they have taken their mask off, and the to and from school transportation. That was it. And that should cut down significantly the amount of students that we have to deem as close contacts for quarantine purposes. They're still considered close contacts, but not for quarantine purposes. So the letter that will go home today, that is a draft from the Department of Ed, which Audrey and her staff reviewed and modified for our purposes, is that now when we have that situation, we are not calling every family and saying your child is a close contact, they need to quarantine. We are sending a letter to every family that has been identified, specifically stating that they were identified as a close contact. They do not need to quarantine. We still recommend getting tested and go from there. And that's what is being the guidance that we're getting from the state. This is how they want us to approach it. It will actually reduce a lot of time from our staff in admin as well as our nursing staff in making all of these calls. So the principals will be the ones sending the letters out. There will be a subject headline for the email that will read important, your student has been deemed a close contact. And then the letter will be attached to it with very specific information. So again, it's a change. We will continually remind folks that this is what it looks like. The email I sent Audrey, she was like, people are going to be confused. Yep, they are, because it's a change in process. But we want to still get that information out. I will send that letter out in numerous languages today as well, so folks can read that. But that's a pretty significant change. Questions on that component? And Audrey, did I capture it correctly? Okay, thank you.
Jim, is the letter just by email, or will they get a letter in the mail, just
No,
so everybody knows what to watch for?
It'll
Just by
be,
email.
it'll be email because that's more immediate, and we can't trust mail getting delivered on time. I think what we could do is, and I'll talk to the admin team, we potentially could go into our reverse 911 and click on a box for just individual in our new system, which isn't up and running. It'd be a lot easier. We all know that, but we could be able potentially be able to click on these individuals and say an email was sent home with regard to your child being in close contact. They do not need to quarantine, but we haven't gotten that far yet. The state just recommended an emailed letter. So.
Is there any way to like make sure that the email was opened or read, so you know who to follow up with, or is that end our obligation once we press send on the letter? You know, should we be following up to make sure people really do have the information?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know. We should be able to do is mark the emails as indicate when read.
Yeah, but I always say no to those things. Everybody
I know,
does.
most people
So that's fruitless. It's meaningless. I wouldn't,
Right.
and it only irritates people when you add read receipts. But
I'm the same way.
Could
So-
send a letter home with the kids too. I don't know. We could think about that.
Yep. Especially at the younger ages. But
Yeah.
again, I think let's see what the process is, and maybe we can actually do a follow-up. Our admin can do a follow-up if we need to. So.
Any other questions or comments on that before Jim goes on? Okay, Jim.
Okay. And then the next piece, which Ed, Audrey, Kelly, and I have a meeting later this morning coming up. Ed, do you want to share some potential really exciting news
Sure.
with the committee and the community?
Sure. So as most of you know, Ashland joined a regional collaborative made up of 6 other towns. And we've been running for the last, we're going into week 4 next week, a vaccine clinic at the DoubleTree Hotel in Westboro. We've been doing 1,500 doses a week of Moderna. We have been running, the state's been watching us, and we've been running at a 98% capacity, which is phenomenal compared to any other of the regional sites. So this week we were asked if we would have the ability to take on an additional 1,200 doses of Pfizer and gear that toward 16 and 17-year-olds. And of course we said yes. So we are getting 1,200 doses of Pfizer. We are planning, the planning today is at 11:30. We are going to be running that clinic next Saturday at the DoubleTree Hotel in Westboro. So what it will do for the 7 towns, I'll have Kelly St. Kerr or Jim will send out a link where people will be able to register their children and fill out a consent form. And they will be able to come up to the DoubleTree. We'll be running that all day on Saturday. The plan is to do all 1,200 doses in the one day. And then what the state is pretty much telling us, if we can do the 1,200, we'll get an additional 1,200 the following week. So anybody that misses out, and we're guesstimating, we're probably around 3,000 between the 7 towns, about 3,000 kids in that age range that will be eligible to come up for the vaccine.
So, hey, Ed, I assume this is coupled with, hey, and you're gonna get another 1,200 in 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's a guarantee. So what'll happen is when the students come in, obviously we're gonna have their cell phone numbers. Before they leave, they're gonna automatically be scheduled for their second dose.
I mean, it's really great news. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Ed, and congratulations to you and all involved. Do you have any sense of whether we'd be able to continue that if the Pfizer one gets approved for 12 to 15-year-olds, or is that too far down the road?
Absolutely. This collaborative has been one of the most amazing groups of people I've ever worked with, and we want to keep it going.
I'll state that one of my dear friends is the CEO of UMass Memorial in Marlboro, and he was frustrated. The mayor of Marlboro was frustrated that the local clinic was given to Ed's group, and they didn't get one because of the efficiency that this group has. It was actually pretty funny. So, they're doing a bang up job. It's great stuff.
And also for the school committee, if this happens next Saturday, I'll be there, obviously. If you want to come up and just witness it, just let me know you're coming and I'll give you a walkthrough tour of how we set everything up.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
So is this May 1st or May 8th that you'd be doing?
May 8th, a week from this Saturday. And again, we have our final planning meeting with Jim, all the superintendents and principals at the high schools from the 7 towns. We have a meeting at 11:30 today just to finalize everything and work things out.
So that being said, let's move into the next component. Obviously, we're going to talk about pool testing. Next week is the beginning of our pool testing for our student athletes, as well as anyone else who wanted to sign up at the high school level. Our staff is working hard on that. We had our largest pool testing this week at the high school. All tests came back negative. What I would say is I want to remind folks with the pool testing and that if you're fully vaccinated, if you're a student athlete, if you're someone who's participating in activities, if you're fully vaccinated, that means 2 weeks out after your second shot, and you can provide that information to the school, then you do not have to participate in the pool testing. If you've had COVID within the past 90 days, you do not need to participate in the COVID testing, the pool testing as well. So we understand there are lots of student athletes. Mr. Marks and his group is working diligently with our nursing staff at the high school to identify anyone who should or shouldn't or doesn't need to participate. So thank you to them. It's a lot of work. We're in essence, increasing our capacity of testing from 110 to about 250, 260 students in a single day next week. So that being said, I want to move into the pool testing for in-person student extracurricular activities. We discussed that at our last meeting that this group as well would be under the same policy as student athletes, and we just didn't take a vote on that, and we need to move that forward. They know about it because I've written exhaustively to them about it, but we need to formally do that.
We had a pretty robust discussion on this the last time, but does anybody have anything they want to add regarding this category of students?
Just any estimate of how many kids we think we'd be able to add on with this?
Mrs. St. Kerr?
You're talking about just student activities?
Yes.
Yes.
In-person ones.
In-person ones. Probably less than 50, right?
Yes. Although I've had some conversations with some groups, like our theater group would like to have an end of the year award ceremony. There's about 25 kids there, and they were going to ask, kind of a one-time in-person thing.
And
I guess I would ask, are we considering senior week activities an in-person student activity?
I would say yes, and I would ask the board to actually view that as well, that we have senior week activities where groups and groups of students are coming together and participating in events, and they're still under the purview of the school committee and the Ashland Public Schools. So I would certainly recommend that under extracurricular activities, that senior week activities fall under that category.
If I'm recalling our conversation correctly, that was part of the conversation.
It was originally, but I think Kelly just wanted to clarify it too, Paul.
Yeah.
Yep. For the most part, it's class officers are meeting, club officers are meeting, bigger groups are meeting still virtually.
Any other questions or comments on that?
No, I think we spoke at length last time about it, so.
We did. And so now we just need to close the loop for all those other groups. So does anybody have a motion?
I don't have the draft motion in front of me. I don't know if anybody else does.
I can wing it.
Yeah.
So I move that the school committee require that all extracurricular in-person activity, students participating in extracurricular in-person activities also participate in pool testing.
And then you want to specify senior week and other?
I mean, I think we've already done that, and I don't, putting it in the motion means if we start going down that road and we don't add the next thing that we think of that's in-person extracurricular, now somebody's going to say, well, you didn't say that. So I think we've said that here, and I think it includes all extracurricular in-person activities, right?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
An aye for me. Thank you.
There's no change in phases of model learning. Really, we're in full. What I would say is the commissioner did come out publicly and state that all high schools need to be back in full in-person learning, which we anticipated. I think it was May 14th. So we're ahead of that game by a couple of weeks, which is great. So we've been able to make any adjustments we need to on that front. They were very clear about waivers at the high school level, especially. Don't even bother asking. They want folks back in. And other than that, athletics just started practicing this week. Stephen, is that correct?
Yep.
And so I don't think there's anything to report there. Is that also correct?
Yep. All good.
So,
Can I just ask one factual question, Stephen? There was an open question about whether certain sports would be offered, or there was like one sport, I think wrestling, that was still going forward with a review at the medical MIA committee or whatever it was. Did that get resolved?
Yeah, it has been, it's gone through the sports medicine committee, now just waiting on, I think actually the vote is this afternoon from the board of directors, but wrestling will be moving forward and they started practicing. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Stephen on athletics? Paul, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, this wasn't for Stephen, so I'll hold off for a second if anybody has any other athletic related things.
Anything for Stephen? Or anything else you'd like to add, Stephen?
No, we're all good. Thank you though.
You're good. Okay, Paul.
So this is to the group and to Jim and Ed and Audrey. So it kind of reminded me what you just said. Hey, no changes in model learning, right? It's not really an option anymore, right? So I was one who pushed for our Friday calls, but now I'm asking, do we still want to have a standing Friday call or only schedule as needed? And I'm just throwing that out there just because, you know, the landscape has certainly changed from, you know, when we started doing this, right? And I want to respect everyone's time, so.
I'll chime in on that. It's something I've given some thought to as well, Paul. I think it's a good point for discussion. And my sense is that you know, we're really doing these Fridays every other Friday because we're largely covering the same material at our normal Thursday night meeting the night before. So you know, it's really a couple of extra meetings, and my sense is still that personally, I guess I want to be keeping an eye on it and having an understanding of what's going on with some frequency, because I think there are things other than the educational model that we do talk about, right? I mean, there could be issues that come up with athletics. We talk about a couple of things that are certainly beyond the educational model. So I guess, when I look at it or think about it, we probably have 3 of these Friday morning meetings, maybe only 2 left if we do what we've been doing. And I'm personally, I'm at least willing to keep doing meetings through May. I don't know that it would make sense in the middle of June. But
We have 3 total, Mark, that gets us through before school ends, 3
Yeah.
Fridays.
right. And so I doubt very much that last one's going to be necessary, but it would be, basically a couple of Fridays in June. So I don't have a strong feeling about it in the sense I don't want to force people to do these meetings if people think it's a waste of time, but that's where I am.
Anybody else?
Let's maybe just do one, like, I think Paul has a valid point, as does Mark. So maybe let's meet in the middle, like, let's do one more, like 2 more weeks of data. One more, like 2 weeks from today would be our next Friday meeting. Let's see how we all feel then, and then decide if we want to continue with the other 2.
Really fair.
Yeah, and I wasn't advocating one way or another. It just struck me as, okay, the whole reason we were doing this was these other reasons, and we might have totally new reasons to do it, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there. So I don't feel strongly either way. So.
Kathy,
Yeah.
do you? have-
Yeah, why don't, I like Erin's approach. I mean, why don't we keep it earmarked? If we feel in another 2 weeks, we don't need to, we can always adjust, but I think it's good to leave it opened, earmarked, so.
Okay, so we'll keep the next one on the books, and then if there's, it seems like it's a good idea. I mean, I certainly want to respect everybody's time. So if there was a strong feeling that we need to cut this time loose, I'm certainly in favor of it. But at the same time, we're so close to the end of the school year. And sometimes and I don't know if this is true for the rest of the year, but especially in a longer month, there could be a couple or a few weeks sometimes in between meetings, and we're not completely out of the woods yet here. And so I think being updated and being able to update the community and have at least an option for people to come on and hear about what's going on, in the past week has been a good thing. So I'd be in favor of continuing it, but I'm certainly also very happy to just keep it open and decide as we move along with keeping the next one on the radar. Does that sound like a good plan for everybody? Next one is on the radar, and if we feel at the time that the next right move is to discontinue Fridays, we will do that then.
Yeah.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
it gives Jim, Audrey, Ed, Kelly, Stephen time to think about it as well, right?
Sure, and we can also meet very briefly, and not every single person that's been attending has to continue. You know what I mean? It could still just be a place where we come quickly and present the chart and get our questions answered quickly and move along. So again, certainly that's Jim's call in terms of where he wants the administrators in the morning. But again, don't want to disrespect anybody's time, but I think there's been value in it, and things have changed. When things do change in this pandemic, they tend to change pretty quickly. So rather than scrambling around for a meeting, I'd rather have it on the books and then cancel it if it's not necessary, personally. So let's keep the next one on, and then if somebody wants to raise it again, then we'll do that. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Okay. I think that's it then. Anybody else? Any final questions, comments? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
To adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kathy,
Hi.
Aye.
Erin, Mark, aye.
Aye.
Have a great rest of the week, everybody, and we
Thank you, everyone.
for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks.